Hello. Hello. Welcome to the Bible in Plain Sight. My name is Carol Evans, and tonight I am thrilled to go live tonight with a good friend of mine, Mia Godfrey, and tell you a little bit more about her story coming to America. So we're going to let her jump on, and then I will tell you a little bit about how we know each other. There.
Hi.
Hey. Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Awesome. I can. Okay, hold on. Are we okay, I'm not sure we're on the right one. Okay, awesome. So Mia and I met years ago. It's been 13 years ago. My first day at Cellular Sales, Mia and I met, and I was scared to death of her. I thought she was so intimidating, and I was so scared because she had been there for longer than I had, and she was just scary. I was just scared of her. And so, anyway, later I was proven wrong, and we got to know each other. And I learned a little bit more about her story over the years, but really, I feel like every time me and I have a conversation, I learn a little bit more about her and her story. And every time I learn a bit more about her, I feel like God just tells me a little bit more about why he brought her into my life to be my friend. And I feel like there's so many things that I've learned from her and her story and her journey that just have made me respect her even more than I already did. And so thank you, Mia, for coming on and telling your story. Thank you for being willing to be open and vulnerable about that. But she has an amazing story. You came to America how long ago?
2008.
2008. Okay. And tell us a little bit more, or we're going to talk about your journey coming to America, but what did normal look like for you when you were in Romania?
So, moving from Romania to America, nothing was normal. So, in Romania, I'm the youngest of 10 children, and we've been very family
Mhm.
focused, and we used to eat together, every evening. So, that closeness, it's something that when I came here, it was completely different.
Yeah.
So I actually graduated from college May 24th of
Mhm.
2008. So the 25th, May 25th, I got married, and the 26th, I flew to America. So when I came here, it
Wow.
was a completely new world to me. Um, Even I remember the first time I went grocery
Hmm.
shopping. Our stores back then, now it's
Yeah.
completely different.
Yeah.
They were very tiny. You walk into the store and you see from one end to the
Yeah.
other. You know exactly where you need to go. You pick what you want, and you get out. And I remember Robert, my late husband, he dropped me at the store for the first time. He said, "Can you just go pick up some milk? I'll wait in the car." So I went to pick up milk. And I remember I was at breaking point. I just wanted to start crying. First, I didn't know where to go.
Mm.
I didn't want to ask anybody because to me, Walmart, it was the most amazing thing I've
You were
ever
at
seen.
Walmart for the first time?
First time that I was dropped off by myself, and I didn't know where to
Yeah.
go. And I asked the lady, it's like, "Hey, where would I find milk?" And the look she gave me, you could tell like she was a little bit. And I was like, okay, she pointed me towards the milk, but then I got to milk, and I've never seen anything like that in my life. So to others, this might sound ridiculous and might sound like it's not significant,
Yeah.
but I know how hard it was for me because from where I came from, you only knew one type of milk. You wake up in the morning, you milk the cow, you boil the milk, and you drink it. That's it.
Yeah.
No other options.
Yeah.
That's the only option to get you milk. So when I went there, I remember I was reading, and it had 1%, 2%, low fat, almond milk, buttermilk, whole milk, and it was keep going, and then flavor milk like chocolate milk, strawberry milk, and I didn't know what to do. And
Oh,
I was just like, I just wanted to cry. I said, it was such a simple task. Go get the milk. And I
yeah.
couldn't even do that. So I felt
Mm,
like, oh, is something wrong with me? Because nobody ever told me what I should expect when I come to the States.
yeah.
And that whole thing, people, you know, letting go, it's so amazing you move from that to that, but to me it was not. It was scary, it was
Yeah.
intimidating, it was isolating. I didn't know exactly how I should, you know.
Yeah.
um and finally I was like, hey, what are you doing to him? I don't know what milk to get. So he said, just get 2%. And I remember I tasted the first time, I was like, this is very watered
Yeah.
down. I didn't know again how to explain it. I barely
Mhm.
knew English,
Yeah.
so it's completely different. Now you go
Mhm.
back to Romania. I mean, they have big stores, they have
Mhm.
malls, so it's different.
Yeah.
But back then, it's amazing how much changed
Mhm.
in 15 years.
Yeah, it's modernized a lot. Was there like an expectation that you thought coming to America would be like, and how was like your expectation different than reality when you got here?
Well, in Romania, I had a lot of friends, and not
Mm,
just a lot of friends. I also had a big
yeah.
family, and I was constantly surrounded by love. I constantly felt
Hmm.
love. I felt like I belonged. I felt like I was making a difference.
Yeah.
So when I came for 8 months, I I didn't work. I was trying to get my green card. I
Hmm.
didn't have a driving license, so I
Yeah.
couldn't go anywhere. So I started already feeling isolated.
Hmm.
Then when I got my first job, I tried to make friends, but and again, this is my story,
Right.
and it's I'm not a victim. I'm very blessed in every way possible, but this is my
Yeah.
story, how I felt,
Yeah.
and it's not due to anybody. It's strictly me. I remember I was so excited to start my job, and it was a reality check. I've noticed that people were uncomfortable
Mm,
around me. Um, and like, there were times that if I was saying anything, sometimes they were laughing. My accent, if you think it's strong now, you should have heard me 15 years ago. It was very strong. And
mhm.
um, it was it come to a point, you keep trying to make friends and
Mhm.
belong, and you trying so hard to be accepted, but you
Yeah.
realize that um unconscious bias is real.
Yeah.
Unconscious bias is
Yeah.
real, and it was really hard for me to talk about it
Hmm.
because I couldn't identify it to see what was going on. I say, well, that they just don't like me and I just need to move on.
Yeah.
But that created a lot of isolation,
Yeah.
and I feel like for many years I was constantly fight to belong,
Mm,
but I felt like I had to be a certain person, or I had to be a certain somebody in order for people to like me. And I realized that affinity bias
yeah.
was the one I was associating the most with, because that refers to tendency to favor people that share similar interests
Hmm.
and backgrounds and experiences, and that's what people feel comfortable
Yeah.
with. Well,
Yeah.
I had none of
Hmm.
that. I had none of that. And I feel like constantly I was trying to be somebody I was not.
Hmm.
But after a while, when, you hear people say, making jokes or call you nicknames like
Yeah.
communist or or illegal or gypsy,
Mm,
and in their mind, it was okay. It was
yeah.
funny. But to me, after a while, you tend to shut down,
Hmm.
because unless you know what it means to be in a communist country, unless you've been starved, unless
Yeah.
you know what hunger means, unless you're afraid that every moment of every day you could be
Hmm.
arrested or your
Yeah.
parent can be arrested, unless you lived in that,
Yeah.
it was hard for me to take it because I didn't know how to explain what that meant. So
Yeah.
I was just letting people calling me any names,
Hmm.
anytime. And I was like, well, that's how it's going to be.
Yeah.
So it just took me a very long time to actually let my guard down and
Mm-hmm.
trust people and actually make friends.
Yeah. Tell me about, do you remember the first person that befriended you when you came? I know you were married, so other than your late husband Robert, do you
Um,
remember the first person that befriended you, and how did they do that?
so one of the first friends I had, it was Kim and Darren Jones that they were friends with Robert.
Mm-hmm.
But a friend that reached out and took me shopping and teach me how to shop was Mary Carr,
Mm.
Pamela
Yeah.
Cunningham. She is actually from Philippines, and she experienced firsthand what it means to come from a different country. And I
Mm-hmm.
felt like she got me. She understood me. I remember the first time she took me to a store, she took me to Target, and she said, "Girl, when you walk into Target or any store, the first thing you do, you go to the clearance rack." I didn't know what clearance was. I was just learning
Oh,
English.
wow.
And my mom was like, "Oh, is that like a special brand?" And she just started laughing. And no,
Kind of.
girl, that's the cheap stuff. That's where you
Yeah.
go first.
Yeah.
But she helped me understand a little
Mm.
bit more of how to integrate into American culture.
Yeah.
She helped me, kind of hold my hand for a little while and, took me out to lunch during work,
Yeah.
introduced me to different restaurants, took me shopping. I lost count how many times she took me shopping. Not necessarily to spend money, but just to show me the
Yeah.
way of how
Mhm.
things are here. So I will always be grateful for her
Yeah.
patience and her time that she spent with me.
Yeah. You mentioned going out to lunch. Tell me a little bit about, we've talked before about how you had a hard time just digesting American food because it's so different. Our
That's
food has
good.
a lot more preservatives in it. You had, but for us, even to hear, like, we know that food is different from country to country, but you guys like grew a lot of your own food. So that was even more different than just culturally having different types of food. So tell me a little bit about food wise. How did all that work for you?
So we had a small garden at home.
Hmm.
And when country was communist, we were not allowed to raise animals except we were allowed 2 animals a year. So we had one pig during spring and one during winter. And we had to
Mm.
make it last for 6 months for 12,
Yeah.
a household of 12. And um, everything that we ever ate,
Hmm.
it was homegrown, and my mom was cooking at home.
Hmm.
I remember until I started dating Robert, I can count on one hand my entire life. I think I went to a restaurant maybe 3 times.
Wow.
But that's
I
not
didn't do
what
that.
we do
Yeah.
there.
And how
No,
old were you when you married Robert?
I was 27.
You're 27.
So in
So from
27,
the time you were 27, went out to eat a handful of times, that just wasn't part of the culture. And it was also just not something that was normal.
and when I came here, I remember my first meal, which it took me about 10 years to reintroduce that meal to me because I got sick. It was on the plane, and I was like, "Hey, you need to try salmon. Have you ever tried that?" I was like, "No, I did not." "Oh, you need to try this. It's so good." And on the plane, again, food is
Yeah.
different. You can't really compare salmon here, salmon there. But that was my
Yeah.
first. Well, I immediately got sick, and when you get out of the plane and you're not a citizen, you have to go to different check-in points.
Yes.
That was absolutely horrible because it looked like I was trying to run away because I ran directly to the bathroom, from this bathroom to that bathroom to that, until I got the checking point. So for about 10 years, I couldn't touch
Yeah.
salmon. But then I came here. I still have to be very selective in what I eat.
Hmm.
Uh, but let's be honest, American food tastes absolutely amazing, and I eat it anyway, even if it hurts me, just because the taste, it's, yeah, the best food in the
Hmm.
world. And you have all the options that you can find all over the world. So I don't let that be my deciding factor.
Yeah.
My stomach hurts. Hey, tough it out, but in a few hours I'll be okay. But I think it's the preservatives and everything that's put in the
Yeah.
food that I'm just not used to.
Yeah. There was one story that you told me a long time ago, and I've not asked you about this before, so I hope you don't mind if I ask you to share it. But you told me about when you were a kid and your mom was up all night praying because they had come to your home and asked you guys to evacuate.
Yeah.
Would you mind telling that story? Because that story to me, when you told me that, it helped me to understand a little bit more. You used to share your like every meal with me when we first met each other all the time. You would always share meals with me, and I didn't
Now
know why. I
I
just
see how awkward that is, but
but it was okay. Like it was so kind. But I thought, what? And if you brought soup, you would give me like half of your soup. If you brought a sandwich, you would cut it in half and give me half of it. And I was like, does she think that I like? Is there something wrong with my food? Like, what is wrong? And I never said anything. It was nice. You always brought good stuff, but it was just different. And so when you told me a little bit more about your life in Romania, it helped me to understand that. That was part of your way of you including me into your circle, and that was normal for you to into that's how you guys did stuff. And so when you told me this story about your mom, it really gave me a lot of insight on how you grew up and what looked normal for you guys because of what was normal for you in Romania. So would you mind telling that story?
so first about the soup.
Yes.
Um, One of the things my mom always said, if you eat something, and the
Hmm.
country was communist and people didn't had a lot of stuff. I said, if you eat something, you never eat in front of somebody unless you're willing to share,
Hmm.
because they might not have it, or they're not. And I remember one time, one of my sisters brought home a candy.
Hmm.
So I said, Mom, it's a tiny candy. How are we gonna share it? So she just hit it with a hammer and broke little pieces, and every single one of us had a little bit to taste. And she used to say, it's like, never eat in front of somebody because they might not have it, or never in front of anybody because it's just not polite. And that was
Hmm.
part of, I don't know if it's Romanian culture, but I know it was my family culture.
Yeah, right.
How you
Right.
share? Because for the longest time I said, well, that's my country culture, but then I realized, no, no, I think it was my mom. She shared everything. If
Hmm.
anybody, like when we went home um, after in the beginning of the year, I said, Mom, I really love that coat. And next morning I came and she had it in a bag. I said, I want you to have that. It's like, Mom, that's your favorite coat. I'm not taking it. I said, it just warms my heart to know you're gonna wear my coat. And I was like, I told Kenny, babe, I should have never come to her ever, because
Yeah.
that's who she is.
Yeah.
So you mean the story with the
Mhm.
revolution, or about the
Yeah.
food? Okay. Um, so our country was communist until 1989.
Hmm.
And on December 22nd, 1989, our president was captured. Well, what a lot of people don't know, that my family lived 2 blocks from the military base where they held the president. And I'm not going to get into detail, but if you want to see videos, they're all over YouTube, how they
Yeah, I didn't
assassinate him.
believe that until I did it. I checked it out myself, and they're totally there. They're all on YouTube.
I can't watch them
Yeah.
because, yeah,
Yeah.
it brings a
Yeah,
lot
because you
of
lived through it. Yeah.
rough memories. Um, but the night of 24th of December, we had the military, there were tanks going up and down the streets, and they were military, came at our gate and told my mom, you guys need to pack, we're going to evacuate your entire neighborhood.
Yeah.
And by tomorrow morning, the entire neighborhood is going to be completely flat, destroyed. And all of our neighbors start packing, and I was 8 years old, and I still remember like it was yesterday, like everybody running up and down the street, and kids are crying, and there's that, I remember the smell and the dust and the anyway,
Yeah.
that's a story for a different time. But my mom took us all inside and said, we're not leaving. I said, everybody thinks we need to leave,
Hmm.
but I don't want to take my entire family, and if we to die underneath of a bridge,
Hmm.
that we're gonna stay home. Because, and my mom was known as the prayer warrior in our neighborhood, and she said, I had a vision, and I've seen the angel of the Lord in the middle of the street with the double
Hmm.
sworded, double edged sword. and said our family will be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And my father was not going to
Mm-hmm.
church, was not Christian, but he always believed when my mom said something because he's
Yeah.
seen it with his own eye, so many miracles that she experienced. And he said, okay, we're going to listen to you, Mama. And I remember my brothers, my dad, they blocked all the windows so nobody can see that
Mm-hmm.
we were home. And the entire night you could hear the tanks up and down, and they were shooting above our house, and we were trying to peek and see. I remember at one point I was crying really hard, and my sister Mona grabbed my hand and said, "Hey, it's gonna be okay. We're
Mm-hmm.
gonna be okay." And I opened my eyes and I looked, and my mom was sitting down and she was praying at a candle, and she had her Bible open.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually, I fell asleep. And when we woke up in the morning, remember we walked outside and it was dust everywhere. And back then I didn't know what the smell was, but later on I learned it was the gun shell, like
Mm-hmm.
the
Gunshot
smell.
powder. Yeah.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
burn. And we looked, and some of the houses were, completely destroyed. And we used to be house number 7 in the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
And that day, December 25th, 1999, we became house number 1. So now they put apartments all the other side. And I remember
Wow.
neighbors were coming home and they were looking and said, how did you know? How did you know that you're going to be okay in all the houses? And he said, well, I prayed. And my mom that day also asked us to open the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, Mia, you're the baby. I said, I want you to put a finger on one verse, close your eyes. And it was in Psalms. And he said, do not worry, do not be afraid.
Wow.
So he said, we're staying. So like constantly we've seen those type, like we live in a world that people don't believe, not even
Mm-hmm.
believe in prayers, or they haven't seen miracles like that.
Yeah.
But I have countless stories how the Lord provided for
Yeah.
us when we had nothing to
Yeah.
eat, or just due to my mom's prayers and her faith.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So hearing about like your family and how close you guys were and what all just a tiny piece of your story of what you kind of what life was like in Romania and what you went through as a child. It to me it really paints a picture of when someone comes to America and they don't have that same family dynamic, it can feel so alone and so isolating. So you talked about Mary Carr and Kim and Darren, that from when you first came to America, from when you met Mary Carr, like how long was that?
Well, I think I met America. I met America really
Oh, good.
soon because Cunningham was Robert's best friend,
Mm,
and they worked all the time. And I didn't have a car, I didn't have a driving
yeah,
license. She was coming and picking me up like really early on.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Is there anything else as far as coming to America, or if someone knows someone that's new to coming to America, what advice would you give them on helping that person to feel welcome?
So actually, the advice I've learned it from you. um, you shared with me that you met somebody once in a store and you realized that they had an accent. They were from a different country, and you walked up to them and you asked them where they're from,
Hmm.
and it was just a very short interaction. And in the end, you said, I'm glad you're here, or I'm happy
Hmm.
you're here. Well,
Hmm.
when you told me that story, that really stirred something in my heart, because no matter how many times I felt isolated, or I felt like I was misjudged or misunderstood, no matter how hard I tried to fight to belong and show
Hmm.
people, hey, I can be like you if you want me to,
Yeah,
and try to be somebody who I was not, no matter how much I try that. I wish somebody would have told me that, um, hey, I'm glad you're here. Those are not words that, as a foreigner, you hear very often. It's just
yeah,
not. And you taught me to actually start being that person and that light for other people who
Mm-hmm.
are misunderstood.
Yeah.
Because in the end, we're all people. We're
Mm-hmm.
all trying to do the best that we can,
Yeah.
you know, to make it in this world. And the way you said it, it actually stirred my heart to
Mm.
reach out and encourage and welcome
Yeah.
others, even if it's different.
Oh. Well, my great grandparents were immigrants from Czechoslovakia, and they came in 1901 and 1902, and they knew each other in their home country in Czechoslovakia, but they didn't. My grandfather actually liked her sister, but then she came, the sister came, the other sister came to America. So anyway, after they got here, they reconnected. And they settled in Pennsylvania, and they were my great grandparents. So their names are in Ellis Island on the wall in Ellis Island. But I never got the chance to know them. And so when I meet someone from another country, I always try to treat them like I hope somebody treated my great grandparents, and just try to think like, I hope someone welcomed them. I hope someone made them feel special and made them feel wanted.
And and Carol, like a few years ago, I would have never shared anything like that. I
I'm
didn't
so glad
want
you
like
did.
I
Yeah,
didn't want people to know a lot about me,
yeah,
and that's because I said if they know the truth, if they know the whole
yeah,
truth of who I
yeah,
am, no matter how hard I try to be accepted
yeah,
and loved and to belong, if they truly know me, that will
yeah.
make it worse. They're not going to want to have anything to do with
Mm,
me. I'm just gonna share one other example that I share with you that a lot of people think that, oh, it's not a big deal. People, don't stereotype. But there were times I was afraid to talk in public or in groups because I knew it was not always the case, but I
mm-hmm,
developed a fear that if they know I'm different, they will treat me different. And one example I
mm,
told you, and this was actually recent, when I was working at the Belk.
mm.
Do I have time to
Yeah,
story?
yeah, go for it. You're good. Mm-hmm,
I was working at Belk about a year ago, and I
mm-hmm,
was a freelancer at the makeup company
mm-hmm.
and a makeup counter. And a lady came to me and said, "Hey, I want that lotion. I want some makeup." And she gave me a list with what she wanted. And I said, "Oh, it's my pleasure." So I went to look and said, "Whoa, whoa, wait a minute. I don't want you to touch my stuff." And I got taken back and I said, "I'm sorry." I said, "I don't want you to stop touch my stuff. You guys are coming trying to take over our jobs. I don't want you near my stuff." I said, "I want a different person to help." And I said, "Ma'am, with all due respect, I'm the only one. It was during lunch." I said, "I'm
Yeah,
the only one covering those counters, and there's no one else." I said, "I don't care. You call a manager." So I went and called my manager and said, "Hey, she doesn't want me to touch her stuff because I'm different. I'm foreigner." She saw me like, "Oh, she's illegal." I don't know what story
yeah,
she told herself,
yeah,
but I immediately felt like, why am I putting up with this? But I'm putting because, anyway,
yeah.
it's part of life. And the manager came down, and it just happened that the manager was also from a different country. And the manager said, "Look, with all due respect, ma'am, you either allow me to serve you or you can find another store." Well, he
Mm-hmm,
stood up by me, but that doesn't happen every
yeah,
day. I'm hesitant. Depends what group I'm around. Sometimes I choose just I always say, someone say, "Why are you quiet?" And I say, "Well, I like to observe people. I people watch." No, sometimes I don't like to interact if I don't know the people because you never know how they're gonna stereotype me.
mm-hmm.
And I want people to know me for me and
Yeah, yeah.
like me, but it's just hard when they immediately go like, "Oh, she's
Mm-hmm,
different." So I have many, many stories where that
yeah,
happened. And it's hard because sometimes we don't take the time to think. It's like, oh, it's just a joke,
yeah.
or just covering it up because it's easier.
Mm-hmm,
But I'm saying that because if it happened to me, I know it happened to hundreds of other people.
mm-hmm.
And again, I'm not a victim. I
Right.
am beyond grateful. But the I've been here 15 years,
Yeah.
and the time when I finally start feeling like I belong. And I
Hmm.
always had friends,
Yeah.
and God said, I have a hair on my face. I'm
Oh, you're
sorry.
good. You're good.
Um, is when I met Robert.
Hmm.
I'm sorry, when I met Kenny
Hmm.
4 years
Hmm.
ago. He's the person that, and him and his family, they're the ones that gave me the courage to speak up and be myself because it's okay.
Hmm.
Here says like you more than enough, and I
Hmm.
love you for who you are.
Hmm.
So they're the ones that kind of open that door.
Yeah.
So like it's okay to be different,
Hmm.
and sometimes it's okay not to be okay, and it's okay to
Yes.
let know because,
Hmm.
and that took me a very, very over 10 years to actually overcome.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know we're going to talk. We This is kind of the part one of a three-part series because Mia has so many stories and so many parts of her story. We couldn't tell it all at one time. So we're going to talk a little bit about what it was like for her to find a job and get a job, and what some of more of her things of in a job or corporate type of environment, and some different things that she's had to do,
Drive.
and then yes, driving. Oh my goodness, so many good driving stories. And then also looking at more from a faith-based perspective of what was church like in a different country? What were some things that are different about the Bible and about your faith that were different? And so we're going to talk a little bit about that too. But before we go, I just wanted to encourage you all that, we hear a lot. We had a really good service at church this weekend about the Great Commission. And when you think about the Great Commission, it tells us to go and tell others about Jesus and go and tell others what he's done for us. And if you think about just our town, where we live in East Tennessee, there are 50,000 people here from other countries. 50,000 in Knoxville, Tennessee, that are either immigrants or refugees. There's several different statuses people can come to the States from, but there are 50,000 people from all over the country, or all over the world. Um, and if you think about, we interact with them and we see them from all different countries at Chick-fil-A, at the Kids Science Museum, at school, everywhere. And one of the things I always try to do when I hear someone or realize that someone's from a different country and I find out where they're from, when we leave, it's usually a 30-second interaction. And I'll always just say, I'm so glad you're here. And typically they'll just kind of smile and nod. But just in case no one has said, I'm glad you're here. Um, I don't know how they came here, if they know family here. Maybe they're just visiting. Maybe they're coming here for another start. Maybe they're coming here because their country was at war. Maybe they're coming here because they fled for their life. And there's things that happen all over the world that are not in the news that we have no idea about. And we don't know what their family situation was like or what their home situation was like in another country. And that's not really for us to judge. It's just for us to be the hands and feet of Jesus to them. So, uh, Mia, thank you for sharing this part of your story, and I cannot wait to dive into more, and dive into more. You have some amazing stories, and you've got some stories that always challenge my faith. So, is there anything else we're leaving out that you want to share tonight?
No, I'm good. Thank you. Thank you for
Yeah,
allowing me to share my
yeah.
story. Appreciate
Absolutely. Okay. Well, guys, we will see you here next Tuesday. I'm not sure what time yet. I'll post the time before, so we'll see what time works out best. But I will see you here next Tuesday with part two. Thank you, Mia.
it.
Love you.
Love you. Bye.